Turning now to politics in the 2016 White House race, I'm joined by Ben Schreckinger. He covers national politics for Politico and has also written on economics, politics, and culture for Slate Magazine, Newsweek, and The Atlantic. Ben co-wrote a recent piece at Politico.com claiming disarray in Donald Trump's campaign and his efforts to fend off challenger Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Ben joins me right now from Washington, D.C. Ben, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
Now, a lot of people might be surprised to know that Donald Trump has an actual campaign with actual employees and actual offices. We know that he's a guy who's fired a lot of people in his time on The Apprentice, but not laid a lot of people off. You wrote about this at Politico. Just exactly what's going on in the Trump campaign right now?
There's a lot going on in the campaign, starting with mass layoffs of field staff. When they wrap up a primary in a state, rather than leave that organization in place or move most of their staffers over to the next battleground, the majority of those staffers have been getting laid off. People close to the campaign are worried because they've done this in places like Ohio and Florida, where a campaign that was really getting prepared for a general election battle would leave an organization in place to be prepared for November. You have the recent introduction of Paul Manafort into the campaign. Manafort managed the 1976 convention for Gerald Ford, has a lot of experience in wrangling delegates. Up until Manafort coming onto the campaign, there was really no concerted delegate operation. Ted Cruz was stealing delegates from Trump left and right. And now you have different factions within the campaign. You have Manafort with his own camp, Corey Lewandowski, who is the campaign manager still, but in many ways is now subordinate to Manafort, still has his loyalists. It's one big mess.
Why is this happening? Is it because Donald Trump is a first-time candidate and hasn't done this before, or is he just trying to do it on the cheap?
It's both of those things. It's been clear throughout that Trump does not fully understand the process. It has not paid a lot of attention to the intricacies of things like delegate selection. And he also is cheap, as you said. He brags about how he's winning this campaign by spending less money than any of his rivals, how he wants to do that for the country. The flip side of the really stunning success that he has had so far while running a pretty bare bones campaign is that now when you get to this part of the process that's very complicated, that requires having people like parliamentarians on hand at these delegate selection conventions across the country, all of a sudden he's shorthanded and now he's playing catch up.
Can you contrast everything you've just told me that's going on right now with the Trump campaign with what's going on the Ted Cruz side? Is he exploiting Donald Trump's deficiencies? And what exactly does his campaign operation look like?
I would describe the Cruz campaign as a well-oiled machine, especially when it comes to this delegate selection process, which is where you're really seeing him beat Trump again and again and again. They've been working on this for 2 years. Outside groups supporting Cruz have also invested in this process. Toby Neugebauer, who's donated $10 million to an outside group supporting Cruz, has his own custom delegate tracking software that he bought and acquired before this election even started. And so you're seeing in places like Louisiana, the Cruz campaign is having success picking off delegates who should have gone for Trump. Just this weekend in Colorado, which has sort of a different system from most other states, it has all of these unbound delegates who are chosen by a party convention or a series of party conventions. Cruz got all 34 of Colorado's delegates this weekend. You are seeing in Michigan this weekend, you saw the Kasich and Trump campaign sort of realize the extent to which Cruz is beating them. They teamed up and shut Cruz out of the Michigan slate of delegates. But so far the story has really been a very well-prepared, well-funded machine winning these delegate battles for Cruz.
That sounds like it could be a smart strategy in the short term, but in the long term, if he's going to win in the general election, he's going to have to get these Trump supporters and Kasich supporters, and even going far back to the Rubio and Jeb people, to jump on to Team Cruz if he is in fact the nominee. If he doesn't get the most votes, and he wins this nomination because he, as you described, has this intricate delegate operation and is able to win without getting the most votes, then there's going to be a lot of hurt feelings. Do you think that what he's doing now is going to poison the well in the long term?
That's a great question. There may be a lot more than hurt feelings. Donald Trump is promising riots if he enters Cleveland as the delegate leader and doesn't leave as the nominee. But the reality is that anyone who emerges as the Republican nominee is going to face a similar conundrum. If it's Trump, you're dealing with the fact that there's a huge never Trump movement within your own party. There's a huge number of, so far we've mostly heard from opinion leaders in Republican circles and conservative circles who say that they'd stay home or vote for a third-party candidate or even vote for Hillary Clinton if Trump were the nominee. As you said, Cruz would face the same problem with Trump's people. If it were to be Kasich, he'd face an even bigger problem because then he has fewer voters than Kasich or than Cruz or Trump. And if it were Paul Ryan or some other dark horse candidate who emerged, on a fourth or a fifth or a subsequent ballot, they'd face the problem that they didn't run at all and that there are millions of voters who would feel disenfranchised. So the Republican Party, just in general, is facing a pretty gargantuan task in trying to unify after Cleveland.
Well, and the theme to this election so far, not only on the Republican side, but the Democratic side as well, has been an anti-establishment sort of sentiment. And if you've got a guy that goes into the convention with a plurality of voters, and then in this Tammany Hall style convention, they go into the smoke-filled room and say, no, you know what, the guy who got the most votes isn't going to win. I mean, I think you could see a reaction to that like you've never seen before, and almost a poetic fitting end to this anti-establishment fever that's been going through the country.
Yeah, and people in Cleveland are worried about that. The police have ordered riot gear. The feelings could run high, and it could go beyond political consequences to actual unrest in that city. And it's hard to see what the ideal outcome for the party is, because many of them are convinced that nominating Trump would also be a huge disaster for the party.
All right, Ben, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining me on this edition of Politicking.